morning, everybody. This is Mike Layton from Stochastic Marketing, and I'd like to welcome back Brandon Jacob, CPA, the author of the book, Operation Exit Strategy, and he's going to share some of his latest new developments that he's sort of uncovered in financing either the sale or acquisition of a contractor business. And it's good to talk to you again, Brandon.
Mike, good to talk to you.
Hey, as I understand it, you've got some kind of exciting news regarding lending to contractors that really hasn't been available before. Tell us a little more about that.
Mike, I do have some exciting news. It is called the Small Business Administration, or the SBA. And what a lot of people don't know is the SBA has a loan product that is specifically designed to provide financing to small business owners through private lenders. And what's the important piece of this SBA lending is that they'll lend based on cash flow and not on collateral. And this is important because, as we know, in service contracting businesses, the amount of assets, collateral, is traditionally pretty light.
So this is important because contractors can get loans without having all the, the collateral that traditional banks look for.
Absolutely groundbreaking, right? It's all based on cash flow. Yes, sir.
So it's still a program. SBA kind of gets a bad rap sometimes. It's still a program that businesses can borrow through private lenders, right?
That is correct. They're borrowing through a private lender. And I think I heard you say sometimes they get a bad rap. And here's some more good news. The reason why there's traditionally been a bad rap, if you will, is that these private lenders were generalists, meaning they didn't focus on any one industry. They would be lending to, one industry and then the next day the next one. But today, we have an SBA lender who is willing to look deep into our industry, service contractors.
And so what's different now? What's different now than, 5 years ago, 3 years ago?
What's different today is that there's a bank, Live Oak Bank, out of Wilmington, North Carolina. And Live Oak Bank is, Mike, the premier SBA lender in the United States. And Live Oak takes their lending a little bit different in that they do go for what they refer to as verticals. They got the start several years ago lending specifically to veterinarians. And then they expanded. They expanded into funeral homes. They expanded into self-storage. They expanded into craft brewing, which is something near and dear to both of our heart. And earlier this summer, they contacted me and started asking about the service contracting business, and recently named that their next vertical.
So, that sounds a lot like a specialty lender I used to work with in a kind of a previous life years ago when I used to help liquidate printing companies. Back then, Sumitomo Chemical, which you never would have thought of, big Japanese lender. They had a real small little specialty lending company in Connecticut, and that's all they did was make loans on printing equipment all over the world. So, they had a small group. They were looking at printers, financials all day, every day, so they knew the market. They understood the industry, and they could make, decisions faster than typical banks. Your typical banker would kind of go, what's a press, and, what do we do with this? So it sounds like Live Oak Bank, for the first time, is somebody that can make loan decisions to service contractors, HVAC, plumbing, whatever, because they understand the nuances of the industry. Is this just for business transactions?
Let me address exactly what loans they'll make first, but let me say your point exactly. Their expertise and how they will dig deep into our industry is going to enable them to cut the proverbial red tape of lending. So you're spot on. They're going to be the experts in lending. In terms of lending, is this for business transactions only, you asked. The answer is no, and that's the important thing, Mike. This is many different loans they might put out. It might be for business acquisitions, meaning I'm a contractor and I want to buy a competitor. It might be I'm a third-party person coming into the industry for the first time. I find a viable candidate, and now I could go to Live Oak to get a loan. It's also, and from what I'm seeing in my valuation work, this is going to be perfect for family and partnership transactions, meaning father selling to son and daughter or business owner selling to general manager. They will also do real estate acquisitions, meaning I'm a contractor and I want to buy my building. They'll look at that. They'll look at refinancing debt. They'll look at leasehold improvements, ground-up construction, and even working capital.
All right. So this is covering a lot of areas, right? I mean, this is covering a lot of areas.
It's covering a lot of areas, but as you know, mergers and acquisitions within the contracting industry is something near and dear to my heart. And, you know, over the course of the last several years, it's always been a challenge to help a father sell to a son or a father sell to a family member, and this is the answer.
Well, let's talk about that, because I know that, you know, certainly my customers, and particularly smaller ones, and I'm not saying smaller in a bad way, just, you know, not everybody's $10, $20 million. Talk about how they buy, how you use sort of a Live Oak Bank when buying a business. Say I'm an existing contractor, and I'm trying to take on a local competitor, regardless of whether the local competitor is 3 people or 30. Just kind of walk me how Live Oak Bank's a little different than, you know, putting it on your credit card.
All right. Let me. You touched on something that's very important. Traditionally, if I'm first of all, let me say this. Okay. If I'm an existing contractor and I want to grow through acquisitions, if my existing business, the business I own today, plus the expected cash flow from the acquisition, if that justifies the payback of the loan, believe it or not, Live Oak could finance 100% of that acquisition. Meaning I could, as an existing contractor, buy my competitor without any money down.
So there's a number of advantages to doing it that way, right? Kind of like
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, because up until now, as a buyer, Mike, I would approach buying my competitor by taking some excess working capital from my existing business, and then I would have to negotiate with that buyer his patience, if you will, to take a seller note, meaning he's going to have to wait on his money. I pay X amount of dollars down, and then I pay you back, Mr. Business Seller, over the course of 2, 3, 5, 6, 10 years. And this is, again, the ability to finance them is a huge advantage, because as a buyer, I no longer have to negotiate with the seller to carry a seller note. He gets his cash 100% day of close from the bank, and then I pay it back as a buyer. I pay it back over time to the bank. And I really even think that as a buyer, it might enable me to offer less to the seller because he's getting his cash up front. And at the end of the day, this can be very important to people selling businesses.
Oh yeah, because I mean, first, your buyer does not have to come out of pocket for the cash to be paid at close, right?
Correct. Exactly.
Secondly, they can probably pay a little less for the acquisition because they don't have to convince the where the seller to, okay, take it over time. How long do I have to wait for my money? Okay, 6, 5 years,
and
10
hope,
years, whatever
and hope he gets it, right?
Right. And third, you can probably move the seller to a faster decision. Either I can do a lump sum at this price now, I got the financing approved, or I'll move on to somebody else. I think that gives them, there's at least 3 advantages, being able to get it financed through Live Oak with these SBA loans.
And no doubt, and because of Live Oak's expertise and their ability to move quick, I don't have to go to my seller and say, hey, it'll take me 6 months to set up this note. It's going to take me significantly less to get something established.
Well, you know, I mean, and we talk about it. Growth through acquisition is something a lot of, I'm watching as I'm seeing guys buy, you know, in some cases, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, probably close to 20 contractors. I've got one guy that's picked up lots of ones using this growth through acquisition model. But, you know, more often than not, it's a family member or an employee who's been working for you for 20 years. And I mean, you'd like to sell to them. You've worked with them for 20 years. You'd like to sell to a family member, but they can't afford to pay market prices. And this is an alternative.
Oh, this is where the real opportunity is. Mike, as I'm doing my valuations, I can't tell you how many valuations I do where, and we're talking small businesses, and rightly so, no disrespect, but businesses or most businesses are not going to sell to a private equity firm, all right? They are going to do just exactly what you said. Brandon, please value my business. I'm going to sell to my son in a couple years. And it always becomes that challenge. My son or my general manager or whoever doesn't have any money to put down. And now as the business owner who wants to sell and retire, I have to wait 10 years to get the money from the new owner. Again, Live Oak and the SBA product that they're going to be offering is going to alleviate that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so many contractors would like to sell it to a son or a daughter employee or whatever, but, you know, the employee, the daughter, whatever, they don't have the money. And like you said, you're waiting 10 years for them to get the money. Everybody's unhappy. The employee or the child is saying, shit, I'm building the business so that I can buy it for myself. They're not happy, right? You're not happy because you aren't getting your money if you're the owner. It's a situation that really hasn't had a way to resolve itself, and this SBA loan is one way to do that.
Yep, exactly, and it's really an unsettling situation in that the business owner tends to keep pushing back their retirement because it becomes somewhat of a trap, right? I want to sell to this person, but this person has no money because this person's working for me. And the reality is, they're never going to have enough money, right? It's never going to happen. And what I've seen is two things. One, son or daughter becomes frustrated, right? They're ready to take the business over, and the general manager in some cases, who is the most likely buyer, he gets frustrated, and what happens? He goes and does something else.
Goes out on his own, right? Yeah.
Really prolonging this sale to an inside person has some big negative effects, and it's typically due to the fact that there's never been financing available.
All right. So what, you know, you mentioned existing contractor can finance maybe up to 100% of an acquisition. Can a family member or an employee finance 100% of the buyout, or what are they talking about?
Okay, I did mention that there's an opportunity for a existing contractor to finance 100%. If son or daughter is looking at the business, it's not going to be 100%, but the good news is it could be as much as 90%, and in some cases, Mike, as much as 95%. So we're close to 100% here.
So let's just Brandon, just assume like you got Junior, and he decides he wants to buy Dad's business. I had a call like this yesterday. I think they waited a little long, but so let's assume Junior says, "Okay, Dad, you're getting too old to keep working. You're 75. I'm finally going to make a decision." And it's a small. This is a perfect example, a small one. So let's say they come up with a purchase price of $1 million, right? Okay. Junior says, "Okay." Junior and Dad say, "Okay, $1 million we'll do it." And let's assume cash flows justify that purchase price. So Junior only has to come up with $100,000, and Live Oak will finance the rest.
That is correct. I mean, $100,000. And if Dad is willing to carry 5% of that purchase price in a seller note, we're talking 5% now, so $50,000, then Live Oak would finance 95% of it. Let me step back.
All right.
Dad carries 5%, Live Oak finances 90%, and now Junior has to come up with 5%. In this example, $50,000. So Junior could literally buy Dad's business for $1 million with only $50,000 cash down.
If Junior and his sister own 10%, then
let's talk about that's thank you for bringing that point up. Let's say Dad and Junior did some pre-planning, and years ago, Dad sold Junior. Now Live Oak could finance 100% of the rest. So in the case of pre-planning, it could be to the seller's advantage, Dad's advantage, to sell a portion of the business to Junior prior to going to Live Oak. It's not necessary, but it certainly could be done.
Yeah, but it's possible. It's possible.
It's very possible, and 10% ownership of Junior, he might have bought that 10% 10 years ago, and now all he has to do is go to Live Oak, and they'll finance the remainder.
Well, I know you've done a lot of work with some of the larger contractors that we've kind of worked together with. And those guys, the larger contractors who attract the interest of the private equity groups, they don't really, most of our listeners aren't at that level. So this sounds like something new for the majority of the contractors who are just not very likely. I mean, let's just be realists. They're not really likely to go to $10 or $20 million level that private equity groups are kind of interested in talking to. How can you introduce them to Live Oak Bank? How can you, the majority of the contractors, the $2 million contractors, the $4 million, the $6 million contractor, of which there are thousands. Somebody like yourself, how do you introduce them to Live Oak Bank?
Mike, I would first say that I am in contact with Live Oak. I certainly plan to help my clients who are attempting to do this by referring them to Live Oak. So my first suggestion would have anybody who listens to this give me a call. I would be glad to make an introduction to Live Oak on their behalf. But before doing that, I would also encourage them to go to the Live Oak Bank website, liveoakbank.com, and take a look. Take a look and see. They have a section in there that specifically speaks to service contractors. Do some research, but again, at the end of the day, if someone wanted to find out more or wanted to make a direct contact to the bank, I certainly would be happy to do that for them.
I'm laughing. Give them the phone number, man. It's 713-443-8311. You must have had a tough time when you were dating. So if you want to reach Brandon, call him at 713-443-8311.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah.
And you can
713-443-8311. I could talk. I'm versed in what they're looking for. I'm versed in, obviously, in helping people do business valuations. And I'm very excited. I'm
sure.
To me, sincerely, I've been in the industry for a long time, and I've seen many companies sell, to the likely suspects, to the private equity companies. But this is our industry's opportunity for people to grow a business, 1 million, 2 million, 4 million, as you said, great little businesses that have employees, have customers, have value. But up until now, selling these businesses has been a challenge, and the best buyer is going to be that employee, that family member, or even that third party coming from outside who might not have enough financing to pay enough money down. But now this is the opportunity. We have so much going on in our industry, and this is the answer for somebody who wants to sell a business.
No, that's why I wanted to introduce this to people. I mean, I see it in some of my customers who are doing the acquisitions, and they're buying lots of these kind of guys. But for all of our listeners, if you obviously I don't need to give you Brandon's phone number again, but if you go to our website, stochasticmkt.com, you can get more information on this. You can listen to this podcast. You can, if you need help looking at a market, to do sort of an appraisal. If you're thinking about buying a competitor 10, 20 minutes away from you, and you want to get an assessment of what can be harvested in his area, just go to our website and book an appointment, and it's easy to do online, and or connect with Brandon. But you know, this is something new and exciting, and I thought it's important that people know about it. You're not going to hear about it probably unless you kind of listen to podcasts like this or meet someone like Brandon or myself at one of the trade shows that we go to. But thanks all our listeners for listening. I hope you find this helpful. I hope you reach out to Brandon or myself and see if this can't solve some of your problems and help some of your employees. Anything else, Brandon?
Well, let me just say also, if somebody feel free to call me, but if they wanted to email me, my email is Brandon at contractorscfo.com. That's contractors with an S, and then CFO, chieffinancialofficer.com, and I'd be glad to answer any questions whatsoever.
Well, fantastic, Brandon. I hope we can help some guys at least take some baby steps towards moving forward on some of these. I know it's a hot topic, and I appreciate everybody listening. And reach out to one of us if you need any help.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Okay, talk to you soon.